Thank you so much for staying with us. We continue with you on Beyond the Headlines. So, y'all say you want to talk about issues. So, I could talk about issues. The PNP's opposition spokesperson on education, Senator Damion Crawford, making a number of proposals that he says the opposition, the PNP, would implement to try to improve the education system. He joins us now. Senator, appreciate you talking to us. Thank you so much.
Hi, good afternoon, Mrs. Jackson. How are you doing? Good afternoon today, listeners.
Very well. Appreciate you being on. Remind the listeners our WhatsApp number, 876-254-0693, 876-254-0693. Give us your first name, your general location. So one of your proposals, Senator, that has got a lot of attention so far is this idea of extending the school day by 2 hours. So tell us exactly what it is you have in mind.
Okay, so the crisis situation don't have to be mentioned. We're at 18% having 5 subjects, and we're at 64% being literate at the 4th grade level. We'd have seen reports in the media about over 80% of students at Pembroke Hall and also at Holy Trinity, and many more schools have that reality. Quite a bit of students, over 40%, are within the pathway 3, which is normally 3 to 5 years behind where they're supposed to be. So what we have recognized is that extra lessons have become indicator of performance across multiple subjects. In particular, those getting their proficiency in the PEP exams often would have had extra lessons, and those passing math, physics, chemistry, and multiple other subjects would have had extra lessons at the CXC level. So the impact of extra lessons cannot be questioned. The only reality is that those extra lessons are based on affordability and private arrangements, most times between teachers and parents. Unfortunately, there are some teachers who, especially in the deep rural and in the inner city communities, that don't have parents that can afford, but due to their commitment, they have stayed back to do those private lessons in an attempt to assist those children. So what we had proposed is that, one, teachers would be able to volunteer, and that was in the article, and they'll be paid for volunteering their time to assist in creating that environment for extra lessons and homework. That would be Mondays and Wednesdays. And on Tuesdays and Thursdays for clubs and societies, so that we can start with our values and attitudes and behavior modification. One of the reasons we proposed this as well was that we have seen that the gap between a child being home and a parent being home, which is normally 3 o'clock for a child and 7 o'clock for a parent, has left many of our children unsupervised and has created opportunity for unscrupulous individuals to take advantage of our children. One of the outcomes we posit is the recent report that 60,000 young girls had adolescent pregnancy between 2009 and 2019. And the World Bank indicated that in Jamaica, 46% of girls who drop out of school early is due to pregnancy. We also see the negative of unsupervised children in houses burning down, injury to children, especially of younger age. And we have seen also that unattached young men have been the chief recruiters to gangs. And so we felt that we needed a safe space that created an environment for study and allowed for additional attention. Where there is that we have a shortage of teachers willing to participate and applying to participate, we'll call upon our retired teachers to supplement their pension. We'll use our sixth formers, especially for the lower grades, like grade 7, and we will use our university students to supplement by creating that environment and rendering assistance to the students who are going home without the necessary help. So it's not mandatory for teachers, and they would be paid. Now, the other aspect is there are some children for which it would be mandatory. If you consistently show up without your homework or consistently find it incompetent to do that homework, you would have to be registered for additional lessons. If the guidance counselor perceives that your home situation is one in which you need parental supervision and therefore should be retained until a certain time when your parent is home, you would have to participate. And for those in the pathways that are 2 or 3 years behind the level that they're supposed to be, they will have to participate. bi-weekly as well, a teacher can be able to recommend a child for participation because of their performance in that topic area. So a child not normally asked to participate, but is having problems with fractions, can be asked to participate that week to make sure that they catch up in fractions before the teacher move on to decimal. So that was the crux of the proposal that we had.
All right, couple questions. Nearly at the break, but first, you said earlier on teachers would be asked to volunteer, but would be paid for volunteering. So is it,
yes.
Which one is it? Because volunteering seems to...
teacher is not mandatory. So the term volunteer means they'll apply. So it's not mandatory. And when they apply, those that are chosen based on subject area of need, etc., that they will be paid. They'll be able to apply for a certain amount of hours. So those who want to do 4 hours, those who want to do 2 hours, etc., they'll apply for those 2 hours in a particular school. So it is actually possible for a campaign teacher to say, I will do 2 hours at Papine, or I will do 2 hours at another school. She don't have to do it in her school, especially because most of those children would not have been mandated, and parents would have to sign up those children that are not mandated to participate. So the term volunteer simply means not mandated to participate, that they would choose to participate if they so desire.
All right, couple more questions, but we're at the break. Let me ask you to hold on. We're talking to the opposition spokesperson on education, Senator Damion Crawford, about some of the proposals the opposition is making for the education sector. Remember our WhatsApp line, 876-254-0693. Give us your first name, your general location. We soon come. Thank you so much for staying with us. We continue with you on Beyond the Headlines. I'm Dionne Jackson Miller. We're talking to opposition spokesperson on education, Senator Damion Crawford, about some of his party's proposals for education. Couple of your comments, 254-0693. Noel in St. Catherine, Noeb, I think, in St. Catherine says it's rough on parents out there. The time difference when a child gets home versus when the parents get home does create gaps in opportunities for child care services. And we have as well another listener. Okay, just missed my cue. All right, another listener saying I was a bit skeptical about Mr. Crawford's idea at first, but I like the part about teachers volunteering at different schools. That would be a plus for schools that don't have enough qualified teachers in a particular subject area. And another listener says what Senator Crawford is proposing could arguably be coined reciprocal volunteerism. All right. So a couple more questions for you. So let me make sure I understand, because I think when the announcement was officially made, people heard 2 days on the school day, and I think people were thinking this was a across the board extension of the school day. What I'm hearing, if I understand you correctly, is that these extra 2 hours you're describing would be for 2 days extra lessons, for the other 2 days. Well, 2 of the other days, extracurricular activities paid for by the state, and that time would not be mandatory either for teachers or students, except those doing poorly who might be mandated to do it, and that parents and students could opt in to these extra lessons. Is that correct?
Correct. That's correct. So it is mandatory for some students who need it, who the school would have identified, whether through the guidance counselor or through the different teachers, the principal that needs it. Then other parents, for the peace of mind, we could also say, I want my child to participate, and then sign them up to participate. But for no teacher at all, it is mandatory. The teacher would apply. So a teacher can actually apply and not be selected by the simple fact that we don't need that particular intervention, or we don't need at that school. So a teacher could apply and even not get the 2 hours that we have called upon. So, and if you look, Chicago recently did 600 schools extended school days. The teachers were paid an application for the number of hours. So a teacher could say, I will do 4 hours for the week, and another teacher can say, I will do 2. 2 would be the minimum because that is 1 day. So yes, you are correct in your.
Okay. Would this now be from which grades are we talking about? Would it be first to fifth form?
All grades. Because we do have underperformance at all grades. We have seen a recent report that said 50% were not ready for 1 grade. So when you have a pathway 3, in 3 grade, it means that they're reading at what they call pre-primary level. So the only way that child can legitimately catch up by 6th grade, which is 2 years behind where she should have been, would have to be additional hours. It cannot be any other situation for that child to catch up by that time, especially if they don't have a cognitive deficiency. When you have the children in pathway 3 in 7th grade, it means that they're reading at either 3 grade or lower. And the pathway 2 means that they're reading at 5 grade or 4 grade. The only way that they can catch up. So, as I've said before, Dionne, the vast majority of proficient children at PEP, especially those who get their preferred school, their first choices, they are doing extra lessons. All we're doing is to afford for those who are incapable to afford a system of choice that they can choose. For the vast majority of people who pass their CXC subjects, especially mathematics, physics, chemistry, which we're saying we're a STEM country, the vast majority of those, which is not a lot, by the way, because less than 35% of people are passing mathematics, they are also doing extra exposure and extra lessons. What we're affording is for the poor Jamaican child who have interest, who have capacity to benefit from extra exposure, and also to do weekly mediation or remedial efforts so that they don't fall further behind. If I can give you a simple example of quadratic equation, when I'm teaching quadratic equation next week, I'm teaching factorization this week, as quadratic equation is dependent on understanding factorization. The child that I recognize don't understand factorization, I would recommend that child to that week of extra lessons if he's not mandated prior to this, so that when he reaches me next week, he's not a zombie and gives up on himself to say that he just can't learn and he don't. So that is the essence of the plan.
Who now determines the curriculum, for want of a better word, of what happens in those 2 hours to ensure that you don't have, well, would you then end up with a situation where you have different people doing different things? Because you're going to have students coming in at all kinds of different levels. So how do you determine what happens in that 2-hour period?
It will be based on the level, because the teacher would recommend, and the teacher should be on that pathway. So for this week, in 7th grade, based on the current structure of Jamaica's education, in 7, 8, 9, and 10th grade, you should actually have had 3 pathways, meaning a different curriculum, a different approach. So a child in pathway 3, 7th grade, should be having a different curriculum approach and a different curriculum than the child at 7th grade pathway 2 and pathway 1. Now, in the homework center, the child will be going to, so let us say that at KC, we have homework center that is manned by accounts, homework center manned by mathematics, homework center manned by history. The child will then say, okay, I'm going to the history homework if I'm in particular need of assistance. The other children benefit from an environment of study. So some children that live in tenement yards, some children that live in highly noisy communities, some children that live in small spaces with multiple persons living in the space, some children that have been forced by us to be offering childcare to their younger siblings. They benefit from just the environment for study. So, for example, where a 6th former is supervising a pathway 1, 7th grade, they are really, first of all, creating an environment for study. But because they have had additional exposure, and because to supplement this, we will have online resources for them to say, okay, this is the homework, this is the answer. Refresh your mind and help this child if he asks you. Then they can then facilitate that 7th grade. So some people is to have a teacher that is doing remedial effort. For others, it is to have a teacher that is facilitating homework completion, depending on the child and where they are and the subject that they need assistance in.
Now, would schools be able, for instance, to opt in partially? And I'll tell you what I mean. So, for instance, you said 2 days academics, 2 days extracurricular. You said, I think, something like entertainment related on the 5th day. So let's
right.
focus on Monday to Thursday. You have some schools that mandate co-curricular activities. You have to do a club, or you have to do a club and a sport, different types of things.
Right.
So if they say, look, we're cool, we're good, everybody's already doing something, is it up to the school? Can the school say we don't need this?
Yes, because first of all, Dan, as you have said, there are some schools that already mandate that, and these are the best performing schools with the most adjusted children with high behavioral, with no behavioral issues or few behavioral issues. So when you look at a school like Arden that have 18 clubs and society the last time we checked, when you look at Campion that even community thing is a mandated aspect of their offering. And then you compare that to a Holy Trinity or compare that to a Denham Town that don't have those offerings. Yet we wonder why it is that their behaviors are not, they're unattached, they're detached, they don't feel appreciated. And if you add the caveat that these are the children that most need it, that are not getting it. So yes, if Campion already have a system in place, then Campion can say, all right, we're fine. Now, why did we promote Friday as an entertainment day? Because it's the highest absenteeism day. And we felt that if it was an entertainment day, meaning games, sports, it may be an encouragement for students to attend. Additionally, reinforcement measures of behavior modification, like positive reinforcement, is to say if you participate in these things, if you come on time, etc., you get to go to the class party. Other than that, you are doing some other activities. So we also felt that it offered a reinforcement outside of punishment that they could offer. So that is why the Friday. Now, if Campion say we have a 98% attendance, we don't need this, that is fine from Campion's standpoint. If a school tries for 3 weeks and say, well, they're not coming anyway, so we're going to discontinue Friday, that is fine. But if a school have 90% of children reading below grade level, then those children will be mandated to participate. And as I've said, the teachers in that aspect, if all the teachers at Holy Trinity say we don't want to participate, it would be staffed by retired teachers, university graduates, sixth formers, and the Department of Volunteerism that have Jamaicans who are willing to participate. So I'm willing to participate.
All right. Whole heap more to talk about, but let me just I'm running out of time, so 2 quick questions. First of all, are you concerned about what happens in a situation where, okay, so in our schools, there are some co-curricular activities where teachers get paid, all right? The sports, the coaches, I hear quiz people get paid, at least some of them. A lot of the other clubs and activities, they don't. So, bring in a system where you say, if you volunteer to oversee co-curricular, you're going to get paid. So what happens to the teachers who have been doing the work not getting paid? In other words, do you run into a dilemma then where everybody throws up their hands and say, all right, well, yeah, pay some people, I get paid, me done. Hold that thought for me, Senator. Let me let you answer after we come back from the break. We soon come. Thank you so much for staying with us. Just wrapping up a discussion with the opposition spokesperson on education, Senator Damion Crawford. We've been talking about his proposal for an extended, to have an extended 2 hours onto the school day. He's been explaining what he means. And, right, I was asking you just before the break, if it is that teachers are going to be paid to supervise extracurricular activities, what happens for all the teachers who've been supervising lots of little clubs, very important clubs, but clubs that don't carry the kind of cachet that things like track and field and football and quiz do. And therefore, they've been doing that, volunteering, doing it free. And now they're here, hold on, government will pay you over there, so for this, and me I do it for free? What happens then?
All right. So most of the extracurricular activities in schools, even the sports from many of the schools, are volunteer teachers. You'll find many of the sports is being created by the PE teacher at the smaller schools. We seem to believe the example of JC George is the norm. Now, what we want from that aspect is that it doesn't cost the teacher. So a lot of times when they're volunteering for these clubs and societies, chess club, they have to buy their own set or sets. They themselves is carrying the club because there's a cost to it that smaller schools without additional resources from alumni can't afford. So the number one concern for the Tuesdays and the Thursdays is that these opportunities exist for music club, that they can actually buy the system or buy the equipment for music and don't have to find it from their own pockets. So that is a major contribution at this point as it relates to the clubs and the society. The contribution from the academic component is to ensure